Here we go again. I'm only doing this live and completely unexpected and unprepared for because it's better to do it that way. If I were to do a live cast like this and have a bunch of people watching, that would be too much of a pain in the ass to answer everything. So I thought I would do a live cast, and I will leave this up, and this will be a general discussion talking about how to make a fretboard nice and even with minimal effort and minimal tools. And I should note that on my CarpoCraft channel, I did upload a video relating to this the other day. I posted a video about putting frets in, and I was using my little mallet, and I had all my different little tools that I used. And now this one is actually a different neck. It's made of zebra wood. It has a kerf joint here at like 12 degrees, 13 degrees, I think. Beautiful zebra wood. It's all taped off with blue tape to protect it, because you have to protect it against damage. Protect it against, well, maybe if I turn it around that way, it looks better. This is funny because looking back, I've only made, what, 5 or 6? I think 5. Maybe this is my 5th, I think, fretboard that I've made. And I've learned a lot of lessons in the previous 4. I made a lot of mistakes. And I thought I would share and also talk about doing something right, but also maybe encouraging people to realize that they can do anything that they put their mind to, for the most part, without being ridiculous. No, you can't do anything you want. If you're born crippled and you can't walk, then you're obviously not going to be a great runner, right? I mean, it's very simple math. But for the most part, if a person puts their mind to something and really wants to do it, then they can do it. And one of my dreams when I was young was always being able to build my own guitar. And I thought, wow, that's a very complicated thing. As you can see, I built up here. I have here, I think, or works right over here. This is like a Stratocaster, and then another bass up there, and then a bunch of body blanks. I've really put in a lot of effort to try to do it right, to try to not cut corners. I really want to make high quality instruments. And the reason why I'm putting this on my main channel is because I think that it would reach a wider audience, and I'm shamelessly self-promoting my own work right now. And I think that's important for all of us because everyone is getting drowned out in the current world. I mean, I have a discussion, I haven't uploaded it yet, but it's about how fucking ridiculous, like, the mainstream selling, the markets, the way to sell things like Etsy really are, and how you get ripped off. They want to make their cut. PayPal wants their cut. Everybody wants a cut of your money. And how nice it would be to go back to the old barter fair style, right? Which is why a lot of people do go to barter fairs and trade things. And you just seem to get more of a value. But at any rate, I'd made this point earlier that people often who make guitar necks do it, I mean, it's expensive to make one of these. You have to buy the wood, you have to mill it down, and it's has to be carved perfectly. Then a fretboard has to be put on top, which right now the one I have on top of here is rosewood. That rosewood, though, had to be milled down to a perfect, size, then rounded to a 12-degree, 12-degree radius. And then the frets had to be bent to a 12-degree radius and then fit in perfect slots that are all perfectly spaced. And then after all of that's done and they're all glued, if you glue them, and everything's perfected, then you have to come back and put blue tape all over the fretboard. then you have to come back and crown. And that's what I'm doing today. And I'm going to show you how I do this because I just want to share it because, hey, I'm no expert, but on my fifth fretboard, I've learned quite a bit about how to do this shit. And I want you all to learn too. So when you look down the fretboard, you can see how shiny it is, right? You see how that shine kind of follows the frets? Well, it doesn't follow it good enough. As you can see, there's a couple of, discrepancies within there. That matters. If you ever watch a professional guitarist play their guitar on stage and they have it you'd have to look at someone like Trey from Phish. He has his guitar professionally. He has a plucking machine that they use for theirs. It's basically makes it makes the frets perfect. And I don't want to get too into explaining layman terms for those who don't guitar, but I realize this video will be reaching people who don't play guitar. When you play a guitar and when you put the frets in, not only the nut has to be a perfect height to allow the string to sit just above the frets, and the bridge, which is the part where the strings are down below, has to also hold them up. But not too high and not too low. If it's too high, then you can't play because the action, it's what they call the height of the strings, is too high. But if it's too low, you'll get buzz. But here's the thing, this is a bass neck. Basses always buzz. That's what I've learned. But the point, not always, okay, shouldn't get into that. But it's okay. If you want to get a really good action on bass, you're going to have a little bit of buzz when it's in its natural form, but the minute it's plugged into an amplifier, all of that buzz goes away. That's the point. So this one right here actually has a beautiful blue stone in here. It's lapis lazuli. It was a really nice oval piece that I had, and it's actually inset about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. So it's a nice big stone, and it kind of has, I guess, kind of like the look of a fish. I never really considered that. On the back, I also put in a little bit of texturing on the neck itself. And then I'm going to be putting in on the head different, a pair of black tuning pegs. They kind of look like these, but they're larger. At any rate, I'm not getting into that. Today I'm just doing the actual frets themselves. And so I'm going to bring the camera back down here. I'd like to say hi to anybody who's on here first and say hello. Hey, Adam. He says, must be tricky getting the intonation just right. Oh my God, man. Yeah, that's the last process, and that one's a pain in the ass. Adam says, yeah, I did a passive active switch. Yeah, active pickups are something completely different too. Super Daishido. Aren't you afraid of losing or hurting a finger while working? No, I'm not afraid of losing a finger while working. The thing is, if you're afraid of anything, you've already missed the point. You don't want to lose anything. So here's the thing. I put in these frets. I made a video the other day about that other Stratocaster. Here is a different neck. This is a bass neck. I set these frets as carefully as I could. I pre-cut them. I set them in their own little trays, and then I went and I tested each one with a light behind it before I even put it into its slot to make sure everything was perfect, because even a slight discrepancy, a 64th of an inch, makes it a nightmare. And so I'm going to show you all how to do something right. And of course, this is just the way I've learned. So I did this marker, and you'll see the blue on it. And if you're aware, the blue is blue painter's tape, which was put between each fret. I carefully put a strip. This is something that I didn't do on my first guitar, and I highly regretted it, because you have these little protectors which go over each fret, and I'll show you this later, which allow you to polish them without damaging the fretboard. However, stuff gets pushed underneath there, and you end up getting a bunch of black gunk all over your fretboard. And you can get it off, of course, but you have to sand it out. Now, here's the thing. Once the frets are already on a fretboard, sanding it out, you have to go this way, and you're going against the grain. and you can't polish it the way that I would like to polish it, and I've had problems. Now this one I overcame that. I finally figured it out. It took me 5 guitars to get to the point where I feel confident enough to say, okay, I can build a guitar for someone custom, right? If someone were to tell me I want a certain model within my limits, of course, and what I've made, then I'd be able to do it without feeling scared. And I've had scary dreams about how do I do this part? How do I do this part? And that's the thing about any job. When I was younger and I was working in construction before I was a finished carpenter, before I did any cabinets or fine work, I was doing rough roofing, and then I moved on to like labor and siding and foundations. And I was working for this guy, and I was working on the boss's house. And I was having these nightmares that I was working on his house. They were these repeating like fever dreams, but it was just over and over him getting mad because of something that happened working on his house. And that's the fucked up thing when you work for your boss that is some kind of like, especially when you're working on their house. Yeah, it can be a little intimidating, but I always wanted to work for myself. And that's one of the hardest things to do is to fucking work for yourself. Because, man, you gotta actually have the motivation to do things. I know that sounds ridiculous, but a lot of you know what I mean. You gotta be self-motivating. So now I put the marker, and these, as you see, the marker is on the top of each of the fret markers. So it's black, a black line, and it has to be on the top of it, the top of the dome. And it's still a little sticky, so I'll wait a minute and I'll spit some philosophy since I'm, a philosophy guy. I did a video about this earlier. Let me grab a beer. I'm really not arrogant, and I don't want to come across that way because I have fun with it. I'm actually highly insecure in certain ways, but completely confident in others, and I just like to inspire. To mention, I said earlier, I was cutting off the front ends, and I was having a dream actually just last night about this. How am I going to do this? And I woke up this morning after having this kind of half dream about how to turn a pair of these regular snippers, which, if you look at them, they kind of taper down on each side, the inside and the outside to meet, and that's how they're very effective. They're Irwin. I love this brand. But you need something that's flat on the front in order to snip off the very, very, very fine edges on the fretboard when you get the frets in there. So somebody said they took a cheap pair and ground it down. So I spent quite a while grinding down this one, which isn't a cheap pair, but as you can see right here, there's no like gap here. Like here, I ground it down at an angle, and I can just go snip and just snip off what I need right at it, and actually put it on a sander at an angle, and that's how I start the angle of this. I mean, if you do it right and you glue them in, it can save so much time. I just feel like not enough people really give credit to the simplicity of what it is. And yes, I'm using heavy sandpaper here. It's like 120, and the reason for that is because that's all I have for sticky paper that goes inside of this thing. Uh-oh, we just dropped a file. There we go. I don't want to get the files messed up. This is a crowning file that we'll have to deal with later. But right now, sorry if that's loud. You know what's funny? I went into the store to buy beer earlier while my son was in karate. I know, great thing to do, right? Um, I needed my ID, I guess, because in this particular place, this particular Fred Meyer, they weren't allowed to sell without ID. And I felt bad because I know that the lady felt bad that worked at the counter. And she's like, I'm so sorry. She was like a hippie chick. She knew that I was, I'm like 46 years old. It's pretty obvious. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. And just then this other lady was coming up behind me to buy some wine, like a half case of wine for something. And she goes, can I use mine for him? And it was the most awesome thing. It's like the old lady looked at the younger kid and he goes, oh, it's up to you. Your authority. And then she goes, she kind of just did it, you know? And I was like, thank you, you know? That's awesome. I was like, oh, I'm getting closer to 50 than anything, you know? And I got my beer and I left. And that was that story. All right. Now we have it sanded down to a point where all the marker has been taken off. And that's what you're looking for, is just to be able to take just the very top of the marker off. You're trying to crown these frets, which means that, well, you're trying to make sure that you get the crown even on all of them. We'll do this for a moment here. There we go. The reason I use heavy paper, 120 as I said, it's because I don't like fucking around with, puny shit. Like, trying to keep going and going and going. I was like, you start with 120, then you get 240. You gradually work your way to a shiny fret, which I'm not going to do in this video, obviously. I'm not going to do the whole process. There's crowning file, and there's all these different processes to do it. Honestly, I just, I thought it would be nice to just kind of make a quick video while I was doing part of this and show how to kind of even out the basics of the fretboard. Once all of the marker's gone, then you know that your frets are good. And then you have to go back to rounding them again because you've flattened them using this block, which I guess I'd have to go into detail about how to make a curved sanding block. And maybe I'm not that good of a teacher. To be honest, I feel like I'm better just talking about bullshit philosophy than actually making a video talking about how to make guitars or make anything for that matter. I mean, I've been a carpenter all my life. I know basic shit, but it's like teaching is a completely different level. I've had people say, oh, well, you're good at shit, but you're not a good teacher. And I'm like, yeah, I am, man. I'm a good teacher. But no, not yet. Maybe one day. At any rate, now I have all of these even, and the thing I forgot to mention was that before I did that, I tightened the truss rod to make sure that the neck itself was nice and even, because if you're not familiar, within a guitar there's a truss rod in this neck between the fretboard and the neck itself, which you put a usually an Allen wrench in this hole here, and you turn it, and that will bend it either this way or this way to accommodate for flex and bow and change in seasons and temperature. The more I learn about this shit, the more little basic lessons I learn, the easier it becomes. I'm finally at this point where it's like, I feel like I wanted to tackle all the most complicated shit in the beginning, making a one-piece guitar and a through neck guitar. And now that I see how simple it is to make like a little Stratocaster guitar neck or anything else for that matter, it's like Hold on. My phone's falling apart. That's okay. I'm going to go anyway. I'm going to go in and eat some food. I'm hungry. I'll be deleting this live cast, but thanks for watching. And that's about all I got to say today. 'Cause I'm getting hungry.